At Miller's Diner on 5th Street, Tuesday mornings were a curse. The regulars knew it. The staff dreaded it. Even Jake, the cook, who had weathered 30 years of grumpy truck drivers and caffeine-deprived office clerks, would shake his head and mutter a silent prayer when he saw the sleek black sedan pull up to the curb. That car meant one thing. Walter Fleming had arrived. Walter was the kind of man everyone knew by reputation, but few actually liked. A billionaire real estate tycoon with his name plastered across half the office towers in the city. He walked through life as if everyone else existed solely to serve him. When he stepped into the diner, silence spread like a cold wind. Waitresses who had just been laughing at the counter suddenly remembered urgent tasks in the back. The busboy vanished into the supply closet. Even Mrs. Patterson, the diner's cheerful owner, would shuffle papers at the register with suspicious urgency, pretending she hadn't noticed his arrival, because Walter Fleming was trouble. He demanded perfection, tolerated no mistakes, and carried an air of entitlement so thick it clung to him like cologne. The staff had learned that the safest strategy was avoidance. Let him sit, let him fume, let someone else take his order, and above all, do not make eye contact. But on one crisp October morning, something was different. A new face stood behind the counter, drying coffee mugs with steady hands. Her name was Emma Rodriguez. She was 62 years old, recently widowed, and had been working at the diner for just 3 days. Emma was no stranger to hard work. She had waited tables in truck stops, hotel lounges, and tiny cafes across half a dozen states. She had endured rude customers, impossible managers, and 16-hour shifts on her feet. Life had knocked her down plenty of times, but Emma had never learned how to stay down. And so, when she noticed a sudden shift in the diner's atmosphere, the nervous glances of forced busyness, the sharp inhale of breath as the door chimed open, Emma simply raised an eyebrow. A tall man in a charcoal suit entered, shoulders squared, silver hair perfectly combed back, and blue eyes scanning the room with obvious disdain. Without a word of greeting, he marched to the corner booth, the one that seemed to be waiting for him like a throne. He sat down heavily and began drumming his fingers on the table, impatient before anyone had even approached. Emma noticed Lisa, the young waitress she'd been shadowing, freeze mid-step. Lisa's face paled. She leaned toward Emma and whispered quickly, "Don't take his table. Just trust me. Let someone else do it." Emma frowned. "Who is he?" "He can't be that bad." Lisa swallowed hard. "That's Walter Fleming. You'll see." But Emma had already seen men like him. At a truck stop outside Phoenix, she had once refused to let a group of rough-talking bikers snap their fingers at her like she was a servant. At a hotel lounge in Reno, she had stared down a Wall Street type who thought a $100 bill gave him the right to speak to her however he pleased. Money and power never impressed Emma. Respect did. So, while the rest of the diner tried to vanish, Emma picked up the coffee pot, grabbed a menu, and walked straight toward the corner booth. "Good morning," she said warmly, setting down a cup. "Coffee to start?" The man looked up, startled. His gaze was sharp, like a hawk noticing prey that didn't scurry. "You're new," he said flatly. Not a question, an accusation. "Started Monday," Emma replied easily. She poured the coffee without asking if he wanted it. "What can I get you for breakfast?" He stared at her, testing. "I want my usual. And make sure the eggs aren't runny this time. Last week's cook clearly doesn't know what over medium means." Emma smiled politely. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know your usual yet. Could you tell me what you'd like?" The billionaire's expression darkened. "Are you serious? I've been coming here 5 years. Everyone knows my order." "Well," Emma said, still calm, "I don't. So if you'd like to eat this morning, you'll need to tell me what you want." The diner collectively held its breath. Forks froze midair. Coffee cups hovered just below lips. Even Jake peeked out from the kitchen pass-through, spatula still in hand, eyes wide. No one spoke to Walter Fleming like that. Walter's jaw flexed. His fingers tapped harder on the table. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. 2 eggs over medium wheat toast dry, hash browns extra crispy, orange juice fresh squeeze, and coffee that doesn't taste like it's been sitting since yesterday. Emma jotted it down neatly. Coming right up, she said, turning toward the kitchen. Wait. The words sliced through the air like a knife. Emma turned back, eyebrows raised. I didn't say you could go yet, Walter said, leaning forward. His voice carried the authority of a man used to controlling boardrooms and bending people to his will. I need you to understand something. My time is worth more than you'll make in a year. When I come in here, I expect service, not attitude. Emma stood steady, her voice even. Sir, I gave you service. I took your order politely and accurately. I'm not sure what attitude you're referring to. His lips curled in a sneer. Don't play dumb. I know who I am. This whole town knows who I am. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. In my experience, the people who have to keep reminding others how important they are usually aren't as important as they think. The gasp that rose from the diner was audible. Even Mrs. Patterson looked up from her paperwork, mouth open in disbelief. Walter's chair screeched against the floor as he stood, looming over Emma. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Emma met his icy glare without flinching. Someone who's hungry for breakfast, I assume, unless you prefer to leave. I won't take it personally. For a long, tense moment, it seemed he might walk out. His hands trembled slightly. Anger, or maybe something else. Finally, Walter sat back down with a thud. Bring me my breakfast, he muttered. Emma nodded once and walked calmly to the kitchen. She clipped the order to the wheel. Jake was staring at her like she'd just wrestled a bear with her bare hands. Girl, do you know what you just did? He asked in a low voice. Emma shrugged. Treated a customer like a human being instead of a king? That's Walter Fleming, Jake whispered urgently. He owns half this town. Has lunch with the mayor every Thursday. Built the new hospital wing with his foundation money. Emma glanced back at the corner booth. Walter sat stiffly, staring out the window, his profile strangely weary beneath all that arrogance. She had a feeling this breakfast was going to be about more than eggs and toast. Jake cooked Walter's order with unusual precision. Emma stood beside him, making sure every detail was right. The eggs just set, the hash browns extra crisp, the toast dry but not burnt. She wasn't trying to impress Walter. She was proving a point. Dignity didn't mean neglect. You could serve with respect while expecting respect in return. When she set the plate down in front of Walter, she noticed something unexpected. He wasn't glaring at her. He wasn't checking his watch or his phone. He was staring out the window at the small park across the street, where an elderly man sat feeding pigeons. His face, usually tight with impatience, seemed softer. Here you go, Emma said lightly. Everything look right? Walter studied the plate, then glanced up at her. For the first time, his expression wasn't hostile. His voice was lower, almost uncertain. Why aren't you afraid of me? Emma blinked. The question caught her off guard. Should I be? Everyone else is, Walter muttered. He cut into his eggs. Perfect. The staff practically runs when they see me coming. Emma poured more coffee into his cup. Maybe they're not afraid. Maybe they're tired of being treated poorly. Walter's fork stopped midair. I tip well, he said defensively. Money doesn't make up for meanness, Emma replied gently. People remember how you made them feel long after they've spent your tip. For a moment, Walter's face shifted. He looked unsettled, vulnerable. He set his fork down, rubbed a hand over his jaw, and said almost to himself, You don't understand. I have responsibilities, deadlines, investors, thousands of jobs on the line. People depend on me. Every mistake I make could ruin lives. Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out the seat across from him and sat down uninvited. Gasps rippled through the diner. No one had ever dared sit at Walter Fleming's booth. You know, she said quietly, my late husband used to say the same thing. He was a foreman at the copper mine outside Phoenix. 500 men counted on him for their livelihood. He came home every night wound up tighter than a spring. But you know what he never did. Walter looked up, curiosity flickering in his eyes despite himself. He never took it out on the waitress at the coffee shop, or the bank clerk, or me. He knew pressure doesn't give you the right to pressure others. Walter's mouth opened, then closed. Slowly, he set down his fork completely. Your husband sounds like a good man. He was, Emma said softly. Lost him 2 years ago to lung cancer. We were married 37 years, and even on his worst days, he treated me with the same kindness he showed me on our wedding day. The diner had grown so quiet you could hear the hum of the ceiling fan. Every customer pretended not to listen, but no one missed a word. Walter lowered his gaze. I haven't been kind to anyone in a very long time. His voice cracked slightly, barely above a whisper. Emma stood. It's not too late to start. Kindness is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. She walked away, leaving Walter to chew not just his eggs, but his thoughts. The next Tuesday morning, the familiar black sedan returned. As always, the staff tensed. Lisa ducked behind the counter. Jake muttered a prayer. But when Walter stepped through the door, something was different. His posture wasn't as rigid. His nod to Mrs. Patterson at the register was almost polite. Emma approached with a coffee pot. "Good morning, Walter," she said, using his name for the first time. "How are you today?" Walter looked up, surprised by the personal greeting. "I'm not sure how I am," he admitted. "I've been thinking about what you said, about kindness being like a muscle." Emma poured his coffee. "And what did you decide?" "That mine might be pretty atrophied," Walter said, and for the first time, the faintest smile tugged at his lips. "Think it's too late to start exercising it?" "Never too late for anything worthwhile," Emma replied. He cleared his throat. 2 eggs over medium. Wheat toast dry. Hash browns extra crispy. Orange juice. And thank you for asking. Jake nearly dropped his spatula when Emma repeated the order in the kitchen. He said thank you. In 5 years, I've never heard that man thank anyone. When Emma returned with Walter's breakfast, he was staring at his phone, frowning. "Everything all right?" she asked. He sighed. "My assistant just quit. Said working for me was affecting her health. She's a 3rd one this year." He shook his head. "I tell myself it's because I have high standards. But maybe I'm just mean. The first step to changing something," Emma said gently, "is admitting it needs to be changed. That takes courage." Walter stared out the window at the park. The same elderly man was feeding pigeons. "That's Henry Morrison," he said suddenly. "Used to work for me in accounting. Retired a few years back. At his party. He told me the best part of retiring was not having to deal with my temper anymore." Emma's heart ached at the raw honesty in his voice. "I've been successful in business," Walter continued, "but I think I failed at being human." Emma leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time to learn." 3 months later, Miller's Diner felt different on Tuesdays. The staff no longer vanished when Walter arrived. In fact, they looked forward to him. He had learned everyone's names. He asked Lisa about her college classes, and once slipped her a check to help pay tuition. He complimented Jake on his cooking and told Mrs. Patterson how much he appreciated the diner's atmosphere. The transformation wasn't instant. There were days when his old impatience peeked through, but Emma saw him catch himself, take a breath, and choose kindness instead. One Tuesday, Walter arrived with someone new, a young woman in her 20s, nervous but hopeful. "Emma," Walter called as they slid into the corner booth. "This is Jennifer. She's interviewing to be my new assistant." Emma brought 2 coffee cups. "Nice to meet you, Jennifer. What brings you to Miller's?" Jennifer looked puzzled. Mr. Fleming said anyone who wanted to work for him had to pass the diner test first. Emma raised an eyebrow at Walter, who looked sheepish. "I figured if someone could handle breakfast with me here, they might survive working in my office," he explained. Emma chuckled. "That's actually brilliant. How's he doing so far, Jennifer?" Jennifer smiled faintly. "Well, he held the door for me, asked about my family, and said please when he ordered coffee. I'm cautiously optimistic." Emma laughed, and for the first time, Walter laughed with her. Later, as the rush slowed, Emma noticed Walter scribbling on a napkin. "What's that?" she asked. "A list," he said, turning it toward her. Neat handwriting spelled out names. Former employees, old partners, even the paper boy. People I need to apologize to. It's longer than I expected. Emma studied the names. "That's a good start. But the best apology is change behavior. That's what I'm hoping, Walter said quietly. I can't undo the years I spent being awful, but I can make sure the years ahead are different. When he left that morning, he stopped at the kitchen window. Jake, breakfast was perfect as always. Thank you. Jake grinned, eyes wide. See you next Tuesday, Mr. Fleming. At the register, Walter paused. Mrs. Patterson, would you mind if I sponsor a small raise for your staff? They work hard. Good people should be appreciated. Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. That's very generous of you, Walter. Emma walked him to the door. Walter, she said softly, my husband would have been proud of the man you're becoming. He paused, hand on the handle, emotion flickering in his eyes. Thank you, Emma, for seeing something in me worth saving. As he crossed the street, Emma watched from the window. To her surprise, Walter sat down beside Henry Morrison on the park bench. He pulled out a small bag of birdseed. Together, the two men fed pigeons in the morning sun, sharing a quiet companionship that spoke louder than words. Emma smiled. Sometimes, the smallest act of dignity really could change everything. And sometimes, all it took was one person brave enough to remind another that everyone deserved a second chance.